Hello, this is Ralph K. Ginorio. Give me a few minutes and I'll give you an idea hopefully worth considering. Another reason why the 2012 election is so critically important, perhaps more important than any other election in living memory, is because of what the United States is to the rest of the world and what it does for the rest of the world. Since the Spanish-American War of 1898, increasingly since World War I, the United States has been the dominant economic power on planet Earth, and that has made it the dominant military power and the dominant world empire, to use world history terms. But unlike every other world empire in the history of mankind, the United States has not used its power like the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Romans, the Chinese, the Indians, the Mongols, and the British, to turn its allies into client states and its enemies into slaves. We have literally fought again and again to set other men free. We didn't take the oil of Iraq after the Iraq War of the first decade of the third millennium. We didn't take the oil of Kuwait after the Persian Gulf War of 1991. We didn't strip the Soviet Union bare after winning the Cold War in the 1990s. Nor did we despoil our allies throughout the Cold War. Germans and Japanese were better off after American occupation freed them from the traditional militarism and autocracy that ruled in those lands. We saved the world from Imperial Germany, from Imperial Japan, from National Socialism, from Italian fascism, from Soviet and Chinese communism, and we are standing against Islamofascism right now. And all we ask is to expand the global free market where we compete among equals. Heck, we built, after World War II, the German and Japanese auto factories that put American automakers back on their heels. The American empire, the Pax Americana, the American peace, is unlike anything in world history because we are a redeemer nation. But all of this depends upon economic power. And our economic power is based on the unshackled creative freedom of the American citizen. The entrepreneurial spirit that takes a dream, gives it form, and makes the world a better place for it. But all of that is being called into question now. Half of this nation's debt, to two-thirds of this nation's debt, was earned between George Washington's presidency and George Walker Bush's presidency. And half to two-thirds of our debt, we're talking in the trillions, that's thousands of millions of dollars, has been since Barack Obama took the oath of office. The thing about being a debtor is you can't take your profit and invest it in your future. You can't, as an individual, invest in your education. You can't invest in science as a nation. You can't invest in infrastructure. You can't invest in a military to protect you or the peace of the world, because all of your profit is going to pay back your creditors. And our creditors, thank you, President Obama, include and are led by the People's Republic of China, which, aside from maintaining a communist government's gentle touch towards its own people, is our only potential competitor for world power. The results: no manned space program, the cancellation of the F-22 Raptor, the only air superiority fighter that the Chinese feared, a reduction of American influence in the Middle East that invites war against Israel for the first time since 1973, a reduction of American influence in Asia, which could bring brushfire wars there, ultimately to Europe, Africa, and Latin America. The United States has been the linchpin of world peace for as long as anyone can remember. But because of the crushing debt, the American military is going to be gutted this coming January of 2013 by sequestration, which will cut our force levels back to before World War II levels, and that kind of weakness invited Pearl Harbor. But today we have Pearl Harbor possibilities with nuclear weapons. We cannot afford to bury our head in the sand like an ostrich and invite a predator to bite us in the posterior. We cannot afford to step back from the world, as Ron Paul's supporters would have us do, and just ignore it and assume that if we're nice to others, they'll be nice to us. We have kept the peace, and the world has seen an age of prosperity for the common man like never before. But all of that could come to an end in an age of atomic fire, chemical warfare, or just plain old-fashioned anarchic savagery if the American military, backed by the American economy, is taken out of the picture. And unfortunately, this year, the stark reality is not a single Democrat and not a single independent candidate for President, U.S. Senate, or U.S. House can be trusted to cut back the debt levels and rebuild the American military. As simple and facile as it sounds, the only way you get those things is to vote Republican. Be well.